All right, this is a rehashing of the speech I gave at Nova Hackers recently. If you've never been, it's fun. Go. Anyway, Nova Hackers started trying to do a CTF once a month. We kind of failed last month. Hopefully we won't. But the first one, it was create a server application that is exploitable remotely. And this is kind of how to do it. Anyway, yeah, I'm Mookie, DJ Mookie, whatever. That's my name in kanji because I used to be a Japanophile. Anyway, preface. I'm an old English teacher. I ramble. Stop me if I do. I'm no Metasploit expert. That's why George is here. And the last one doesn't really matter. Okay, so server.exe was what was presented on the CTF. Basically, you run it on a Windows box, and you have to figure out a way to kill it. Well, I didn't do the slides. But basically, if you do an nmap scan before and after, you notice the only thing different is port 1337, yeah, leet, is open. Okay, that's strange. So we figured that's what it is. Anyway, I had a really late night last night. Forgive me. Anyway, point of this is a remote buffer overflow. That's the topic, by the way. So what is a remote buffer overflow? The short answer, something's listening on the other end. And if you throw enough crap at it, eventually you'll get it to act strange. And if you can get it to act strange, maybe you can... Yeah, anyway. So what do? We know it's running on port 1337. I did this on a VM, so here it is. Basically, if you run Perl, you can pipe whatever you want to it. So I ran Perl, piped 100 capital A's to it. And over here, this was it running. Can y'all read that at all? No? All right. Well, the punchline here is, so you run it. It says, bytes received 100, bytes sent 100. Received failed with error, what is that? 10,053. Okay, well, I sent it 100 A's. It said it got 100 A's, and it said it sent 100 A's back. Cool. What about the error code? Man, whoever wrote this, actually, I know the guy, so I won't talk about it. But if you look up that error code, it just means the connection was closed abruptly. That error code is not part of the exploitation at all. Yeah. All right, so 100 A's didn't do anything to it. What happens if we throw 300 at it? All of a sudden this time, who's not seen that box? All right, everybody. So you know what Windows looks like when it crashes. We crashed it. And the interesting thing is it says it received 300. It did not say how many it sent back. It didn't do anything. Okay, cool. So who here has used Immunity Debugger or Ollie Debug? Anything? Two? All right. They're awesome programs if you take the time to learn how to use them. Helps to read assembly a little bit. That's not what this is for. Anyway, so if you do the same thing again, but this time load server in Ollie Debug. No, yeah, Ollie Debugger. You can sit there and look at all the registries that go up. Who knows what the registry is? A registry. Go for it. Explain it, Georgia. Okay, fine. Registry. What is it? EAX, EBX, ECX, EDX. Those are all basically variable registries. You throw things into them and you manipulate it and use it. What is there? There's also ESP. ESP is the place on the stack where the instruction is. I messed that up, didn't I? Yeah, ESP is the actual. ESP is really just. It's just the stack pointer. In the stack, yeah, but EIP is where you return to. Translation: Don't drink too many margaritas the night before you give a presentation. Okay, EIP. EIP is the important one. EIP is the instruction pointer. It's not the actual assembly code instruction that's about to be executed. It's the memory address where the instruction is. So anyway, we'll get to that later. But the punchline you see is EAX. It's a bunch of A's in it. And if you go down here, EIP, 41, 41, 41, 41, 41. Okay, what does that mean? Well, 41 is the hex for capital A. So with 300 bytes, we overwrote EIP. And EIP is the memory address where you can tell it where instructions are. So if I can overwrite EIP, then, what else can I do? All right, well, it's time to figure out where EIP is. So Metasploit has this great thing called pattern create. It makes life easier. Anyway, if you type this out, pattern create space 300, it will give you a unique pattern. There it is. Now, doing the same thing we did with Perl, you can pipe not just the 300As, but you pipe that pattern into it. And we get, what is this? EAX is filled with A0, whatever, the beginning of the pattern. EIP, all of a sudden you get 37, 69, 41, 36. What does that mean? Well, what is it? Yeah. Metasploit has something to help you figure out what that means. Pattern offset. If you put in the pattern offset, the value, numerical value of the EIP, and then the total length of the pattern, which you don't really need in this case, it says 260. What that means is there are 260 bytes between the beginning and where you start to overwrite EIP. So groovy. So we 260 bytes of whatever at the beginning to get to something useful. The other thing. Nah, I'll leave that for her later. 260 bytes. It's not useful. The smallest remote shell I think you can get was, I looked this up on DBExploit. I think it was 162 bytes. 162 bytes, there's enough room to actually get that computer to talk back to you. Well, our objective in this was to create a Meterpreter script. Meterpreter is bigger than 260 bytes. She'll explain that later. So to prove this, though, you can, or let's see. All right, 260 bytes is nothing. We know EIP is 4 bytes, but how much do you have afterward? Because you're going to need some sort of contiguous space to put whatever payload you're going to put in it. So I chose 1,000 because I know Meterpreter will fit in it. But so if I pipe this out, what I'm expecting to see is that EAX is going to be filled with nothing but A's, capital A's. EIP, instead of 41, should be 42. That's the hex of capital B. And then C is 43. We're just going to see how many 43s we can get out of this. So you pipe that all out, and it'll crash the program again, which is what we want. But what is it? EAX filled with A's. Look at EIP, and all of a sudden it says 42. That's good. And ESP is filled with C's. That'll be interesting. Anyway, yeah. All right. The other thing is how much space after EIP is there? Well, you can do this. What is it? There's a hex calculator online. I forget where it is. Google it. Again, it's your friend too. Does the mouse work? Oh, it does. All right. So this right here, you can't read it, 0012 ED, whatever. This is the memory address of where ESP starts. And if you right-click on that, you can actually dump the memory out. There are 2 different ways to do this, and my friend Bill Gross showed me a better way, again, last night before I started drinking. Bad idea. Anyway, what is it? And down here, you can see all these are filled up with 43s. Well, if you take this memory address minus the memory address where it starts, you get the space, which is, what is it, 12 F1F minus 12 EAD A8. You get 1,000 bytes. That means all 1,001 of our C's actually go into memory and do something. There's more space in it, but that's enough right now. So this means our payload can go after EIP, fill the stack, and be up to probably more than 1,000 bytes. Cool. Now what? So what do you know? You know you've got EIP after 260 bytes. You know you've got at least 1,000 bytes. Well, that means you're basically going to stick your payload, your executable code, in ESP or somewhere after that. But how do you tell the computer to go run it? Because if you do that, if you just run it as it is and you stick random numbers in EIP, it's just going to crash, or it's going to come back with some error saying, I don't know, segment, page, fault, whatever kind of weird thing it's going to be. Well, in assembly language, there's something called jump. Jump starts executing code at the registry or whatever memory address you give it to. So if we can find somewhere pre-existing in memory a jump ESP, not EIP. We need a way to get, oh yeah, we need a way to get jumped into. If we can find a jump ESP in the program already, I'm going to ignore that. Then all of a sudden we can execute the stuff we are going to put into ESP. All right, so how do we do that? Ollie debug, there comes a find module. Acquire Oz. I seriously don't have anything like that? All right. Oh, that's right, because this was the part of the demo where I went to the Windows box. Georgia, do you have any immunity debugger or Ollie debugger on here?
The Windows XP machine does have immunity debugger on it for next week, yes.
Cool. Then let's try this, because this, wait a minute. If you're trying to make me look bad, it's working. Yay. On this XP box?
Yeah.
Oh, there it is. Just for kicks, I don't know. It's hey, why not? Because that'll be fun. All right. So in Immunity Debugger, which is basically Ollie Debugger, but prettier in my opinion, if you hit Alt-E, you can see all the loaded modules. That means all of these dills are already in memory somewhere. They get executed as soon as you run command.exe in this case. If you select one, there's NT dill here. Let's go for user 32. And then you hit, what is it, Alt-F? No, Control-F. Hey, work with me. Bugs, debugs. There we go. Jump ESP. Cool. That actually would work. So we have something jump ESP which works at this memory address. Now it doesn't matter if this memory address is in a different program or a different module loaded into memory, because it's loaded with the program. So if you do this with a server application, I think you can go to ntdill.dill. You can find a jump ESP there. This is what you want to actually shove into EIP. So we have 3 pieces of information so far. We have 260 bytes of crap we have to throw in at the beginning. We have an EIP, or a jump ESP that we can shove in EIP 77D8, that number right there. And we know we can have at least 1,000 bytes of random stuff at the end of it. So that means, now I have to figure, yeah. Awesome. Hey, why are you serving them on me? Ah! I swore off Windows a while ago. Probably. Until you realize that if you want to get paid in the world, you're going to have to deal with it. Okay, 3.6. What is that? All right, so now what? Yeah, now what? We figured out EIPs after 260 bytes. There's going to be 4 bytes that are there for EIP, and we have 1,000 bytes to do random crap. So in a Metasploit module, which is kind of what I said I would give to Georgia to do. Oh, this is a different way. Someone, Wallish, submitted a great submission for the Nova CTF for January, and he had a different way of doing it. It's up on the screen. There's a plugin for Immunity Debugger, which apparently is way more awesome than the way I did it. But Jump ESP, the assembly code for it is up there on the screen, FFE4. If you know the assembly code for anything you want, you can just search for it this way. And this is actually, it can be a little more useful, cannot. Anyway, so 260 bytes, we got 4 bytes for EIP and 1,000 bytes for the payload. And I guess the rest is really up to you, but the punchline is if you're going to do this sort of thing, and PAC-V didn't work. Yeah, the rest would actually be a Metasploit module, but you would write a Metasploit module too, shove 260 bytes of crap, pack the return address. Does anybody not know what pack does? Because I had to look that up recently. I knew. All right. Well. Yeah. Okay. So x86 processors run on Little Endian format, which means I can't sit there and find this. I can't just sit there and shove -x 77-x d8 whatever in there. You actually have to put it in backwards, and then the processor puts it in the right way. Pack will take the memory address, package it correctly, and then shove it in there for you. Yeah. Do you want me to like?
They're gonna do exploit development in a couple weeks, so that's good. That was really what I was looking for, like buffer overflow.
All right. So buffer overflow. The punchline then: you shove enough crap, you get it to break. Load it in the Immunity Debugger. Throw a pattern at it. Figure out where the pattern is. If you overwrite EIP, you win. You basically win. Figure out where EIP is. Look for a jump ESP, or in certain other cases, look for more complicated things, which is way past basics. And yeah, and then you wait approximately 2 weeks for Georgia to show you how to do the Metasploit module way better than I did.
What we're doing, you're gonna do flooding, so the first part with immunity debugger and putting on A's and B's and C. You're gonna do that next week, and actually building the exploit yourself. You're gonna do that in 2 weeks. So this was to get us up to speed for those 2 classes coming up.
Any questions?